Hello everyone and welcome back to Archangel RC. Today we're going to take a look at something different, an off-the-shelf, ready-to-fly, out-of-the-box VTOL tail-seater flying wing, the HEQ UAV Swan K1 Pro. The idea was to open the box at the flying field, charge the batteries and fly the thing, since it is supposed to be an experience no different than flying a DJI drone. That idea was going well for a while. I was actually quite impressed by the box the Swan comes in. It is a relatively compact and convenient carry case that would be very suitable to taking with you when traveling, especially when you consider that everything you need to get it flying is in the case. On the inside, it is well organized, everything seems to have its allocated space, and I even got a spare set of props and a second battery, which would make this one even more convenient to use on vacations when you don't have to set it up for only one battery at a time. So everything was going great. I loved the foam, it feels super dense and tough, so this might be durable even in the event of a crash. Parts were fitting relatively well and all was going according to plan. But then I go ahead and try to fit the left motor module, and wouldn't you know it, it doesn't fit. It turns out they'd sent two right motor modules, and since they have a mounting direction and are not actually interchangeable, there was no way to really get the plane flying that day. Really sucked because I was looking forward to flying it, was excited about it, and in big part due to the fact that this plane has no mechanical control surfaces like a normal plane would have. If you notice the wings, no elevons or servos of any kind, which means that even during forward flight the VTOL motors are still the ones doing all the work. Turning, elevation changes, etc., which is a very interesting concept. This definitely simplifies things in terms of installation and a few less things that can go wrong. Granted, if something goes wrong with the VTOL motors, you don't really have a way of controlling the plane, but it is what it is, and trade-offs need to be made for the sake of simplicity and ease of use, for instance. In any case, I do find this way of doing it quite novel and refreshing, and was looking forward to seeing how it does in the air. Sadly, it would not be this day, so I took some photos and sent them to HEQ, and I do have to commend them on the quick reaction. A package with the correct motor module was shipped out in the next few days and soon after made its way to my door. No complaints there. And so here we are at the flying field again, and this time all the parts fit as they should, so the plane was ready to be tested. While waiting for the motor module to arrive, I took the chance to cycle both batteries a few times on the charger to wake them up a little bit, and they do appear to have some nice performance indeed. Voltage sag on the cycles was pretty low, and they did show very good capacity numbers, which was nice. The batteries are lithium polymer, they come with XT60 leads, so you can charge them with a hobby charger in addition to the 220 volt AC charger provided with the plane, but the packs don't have a balance cable sticking out, which means they probably have some sort of a BMS in there taking care of balancing the cells. I will be monitoring the pack's performance as I use them, since I am curious to see if there is any issues stemming from this, because I get a little nervous when I can't see what the cells are doing on a battery, which is subject to relatively high currents every now and again and quicker charging. I may open them up and remove the BMS units at some point in the future so I can have an access to the balance lead if there are any issues, but for the time being I will be using them as they come. The remote is another item I want to touch upon before we get the ball rolling here. It looks pretty decent, features a large, relatively bright screen and an integrated battery which can be charged via a USB-C type connector. It also has a SIM card slot in case you want to have internet on it at all times from the mobile network, but I find that sharing my smartphone's internet via Wi-Fi is a lot cheaper and easier. It is running a rather old 8.1.6 version of Android and lacks a ton of functionality, doesn't even have Play Store, but at least if you manage to download installation files for apps you need, you can install them. I was able to install a screen capture app on it so I can record what I'm seeing on screen, and it has been working well. For some reason though, Google Play Store installs but refuses to run. Not an issue, as everything else critical for the operation of the plane is working perfectly. So with remote and plane batteries charged, it was time to see what the Swan K1 Pro can really do. However, we need to do some calibrations first. So power up the radio, power up the Swan, and when they connect, click on the cogwheel icon in the top right corner of the HEQ app and then go to the Control tab. In there, you will see the compass calibration and airspeed sensor calibration buttons. We would do both now, and even though the compass may not require another calibration unless you move a few hundred kilometers to a new location, it might be a good idea to calibrate the airspeed sensor regularly, though don't quote me on that. I haven't dealt with airspeed sensors much, so I'm not sure if you need to do it every time. Once you click those calibrate buttons, just follow the instructions on the screen. The process is super simple, only make sure you are away from any sources of magnetic or electromagnetic interference while calibrating the compass. Only other settings I changed here were the maximum altitude and maximum distance values, in essence the fence options, beyond which distances the plane will refuse to go. It is very DJI-esque that way, but they just want to make sure you won't be losing your plane because of stupidity and then complaining how it wasn't your fault. Once calibrations and settings tampering is done, it is now finally time to get this puppy, or should I say birdie, up in the air. To arm the Swan, hold the throttle stick down and to full right for a few seconds until the motor starts spinning, then release the stick. To take off, either tap the takeoff icon on the HEQ app or just throttle up and the Swan would literally jump off of the ground. It is a good idea to be in the position hold mode so the plane won't drift away once it takes off, especially if there is some wind. From here, it will behave just like a quadcopter until you take it up to the pre-programmed minimum self-altitude to do the transition to fixed-wing mode, which by default is 20 meters. Don't be alarmed if in hover mode it moves around and is affected by the wind more than you'd expect. That is normal. Chances of it staying rock solid in one place like a DJI copter are minimal, if only due to the fact that in hover mode it is like a sail in the wind and even the lightest breeze would cause it to move around. At this point you might want to have the Swan land automatically by tapping the landing icon in the app, or you can land it manually if you wish, just so you can get a feel for the aircraft. Once you feel ready to move on to the transition to forward flight, you have to go into the settings and disable the novice mode option to enable the aircraft to do the transition. While the novice mode is active, it will not allow you to take off without a GPS lock and will not transition to forward flight mode for safety reasons. With this done, take it up to 20 meters or above according to the data displayed in the app, press the button to the left of the controller's power button and the Swan will transition to forward flight mode. The same button is used to transition back to hover mode when you are ready to land or just want to stop it in one place for a second and you don't want it flying out of sight. Right from the get-go, the thing that is most notable is just how unbalanced the props are, which is clearly visible via the wavy video downlink. It is quite annoying, to be honest. Funny thing is that since then I've watched other people's videos of this plane, older ones, and they don't seem to be suffering from the same issues, or if they were not showing them. But also I've noticed they had some grey colored props while the ones I got are black. HEQ claimed the black ones are the new version and supposedly better, but looking at these vibrations and the resulting waves in the video feed, I would strongly disagree on the better part. That being said, before the next outing, I will do my best to try and balance those and see if that makes any difference. Now, just a note here, later in the day, under a thick cloud cover and hence a considerably dimmed down ambience, resulted in a slower camera shutter, so the vibrations were not as clearly visible, but more on that later on. Another thing that was also noticeable once I was able to look past the wavy video was that this flying wing was not experiencing the usual tail wag that I have come to expect, especially from a wing of this size. Having 4 tractor motors does seem to solve that problem, which was nice. Right from the start, I would like to say that the HEQ app gave me no issues whatsoever during the maiden and following flights, which was reassuring. Switching between the map view and the live video feed view is as simple as tapping on the small window to swap them. However, I do miss some of the data I usually like to have displayed while flying a plane, so would be nice if there is an option to add some of the parameters on the screen with some future update. I did notice the Android device also had Q ground control installed, but I've not tried to connect to the plane through it. We'll deal with that later on. Overall, the plane seems to fly relatively stable, especially for its size, but I assume that so many motors pulling on it may have something to do with that as well. Looking at it from the ground, it definitely is different than anything else I've seen, and probably the same for most people too. Looks impressive, to be honest, moves around with authority and purpose, and does not seem like it will be easy to crash it. In fact, it may prove to be an issue even if you are trying to, unless you just go and find something tall to run into. Turns out that once you transition to forward flight mode, you can't go lower than 30 meters above the takeoff location, which was definitely weird to find out, but kinda makes sense. It is yet another failsafe to make sure the plane survives a bit longer in the hands of idiots. Idiots like me, for instance, who immediately try to take it down low to the ground and do proximity flying, which often results in devastation. So point goes to you, HEQ, for the adequate foresight. Of course, if you launch from a lower point and go flying over higher ground, you'd have no problem running into the ground there, but still, it is a safety feature to at least prevent you from hitting yourself or people and stuff in your immediate surroundings. I did try for a while to bring it down, but as soon as it dips below 30 meters, it would override my commands and jump back up over it, so at that point it was looking like it was hopping around. Sadly, the same limitation is true in the opposite direction, up. There is a maximum altitude limit of 500 meters, which is a real pity, and I do have to look into ways of possibly going around that, because with a nice looking video feed and the ability to hover in one place, this thing would be awesome if it can get into some clouds, and with a promised flight time of around 1 hour, it just might be able to. When I tried it, it did get to the 500 meter limit pretty quickly, but it refused to go any higher. I also did not want to test the range at this point, but that will probably be in the next Swan video, so make sure you are subscribed and have clicked on the bell in order to be notified when a new video is released. Despite all of these altitude limitations though, the plane felt solid in the air. Almost immediately after takeoff, it very quickly started to feel reliable. The only thing I can compare it to is the feeling you get from a DJI copter. You just know it is not going to be that easy to crash it unless you really want to, and even then it will still put up a good fight. It gave me that feeling, the feeling of reliability and trustworthiness. Only time will tell, however, just how well earned that feeling really is, but so far it was doing exactly that, which was pretty awesome, by the way. At this point, I'm not sure what kind of firmware it's running, but the feel of it in fixed wing mode was very natural, looked logical. You would give it a command, especially for doing a turn, and it would turn as if it actually had control surfaces. Given its motor configuration, they could have made it so it does flat turns, which would have looked unnatural, although could have been cool as heck too. But still, it looks natural while flying around, even though the look of it from the ground with those motors sticking out in every direction does make it look like an alien spacecraft. I do appreciate that look though. The out of this world cool factor is strong in this one. However, in addition to the wavy video, I have one more issue with the factory setup, and that is the camera angle. Out of the box, I feel like it is pointed too far down for lower altitude flying. True, you can't go any lower than 30 meters, but still, even so, I can't see too far ahead and would prefer to be able to. 60 to 70 meters gives you a decent view, but again, you may want to be lower for whatever reason. Would be nice to be able to see in front of you. Plus, if I ever get it in some clouds, I would have to actually go above them so I can have a chance of seeing where I'm going. And cloud surfing of this type, like what I did with the Razor Crest earlier that same day, would not be possible. I will have to see if there is a way to angle the camera up a bit just in case. If not, oh well. Would be a win enough to figure out a way to get over the 500 meter altitude limit in any case. When it comes time to land, things are simple. Drop down to the 30 meter limit, come near you and press the button to the left of the power button on the radio. The Swan will transition back to hover mode and then either land it manually, which is pretty simple, or tap the landing button on the screen. Just make sure you are above clear and preferably flat ground. Once it lands, keep pulling the throttle down for a few seconds until the motors stop turning and it disarms. Easy as that. The Swan pulls apart as easily as it gets put together, so it takes pretty much no time to get it all neatly arranged and secured in the case and be on your way. Absolutely love how easy all of this is. In fact, I'm quite surprised it managed to stay in one piece in the air given how easy its pieces are to pull apart. Absolutely love this thing. During one of the following flights, I had the Razor Crest running a mission, so I took off with the Swan and surprisingly enough was able to quickly spot the crest, catch up to it and even follow it relatively easy to keep it in frame. This is again a situation where I wish I'd had a more level angled camera, but this will also do quite nicely. Dealing with the controls to keep the other plane in view is a bit different compared to a copter, so it took some getting used to. Some calm weather would have helped a lot too. It was a nice chase sequence, to be honest, so at the very least I do see some potential in this plane as a tool for my reviews, and since I can more easily reach higher speeds than any of my DJI copters, it may be more successful at chasing those large and quick planes. Apart from that, I can definitely see me taking this along on some of my vacations, where I can never muster up the motivation to take any of the other planes I have along with their ground station gear. It's just too many parts, too much hassle. This though is almost idiot proof and way too easy to put together and get it in the air to pass up. Still remains to be seen what kind of radio and video range it will get, but even a few kilometers would be more than enough on vacation, especially with the DJI Osmo Action strapped to the nose for some nice and smooth 4K footage. I did try the return to home function once. It engaged due to a low battery, but it did return the plane to the takeoff location and was going to land, but due to wind I cancelled the landing and landed it manually just to be safe, so I'm glad that function works. Supposedly when you set up a distance limit and you go over that distance, the plane should go into return to home as well and start to come back, but I have yet to test that, so stay tuned. And there you have it, the HEQ UAV Swan K1 Pro Quad Wing. The DJI of planes is probably the best and most accurate description I can give it at this time based on my experience. This would be an awesome model for people looking to get into planes but have only dealt with DJI copters so far. Would also work well for beginners as well as for experienced pilots, if only because of the novelty of it. And for people looking to have some fun without the necessity to have to actually crash a few models before they learn how to fly a plane. And it is so easy to put together that even an idiot can do it, and even though the case itself does take more space than a DJI Mavic tucked in its tiny carry bag, it's still pretty compact considering what you're carrying around. Now, for those looking to get more serious with this plane, HEQ do offer some industrial grade versions of it. There is one for mapping, one for inspections that has a gimbaled camera on it, and one equipped with a multispectral camera for some agricultural work. Overall, a pretty serious lineup if I'm honest. Given the price of these other models, may well turn out to be that the K1 Pro, i.e. the hobby market, is the least of their business, and that is not a bad thing. The plane can definitely fly for a long time, in which time it could possibly get quite a lot done in an industry setting, plus you can probably have a few running at the same time, and the VTOL part of it would make landings and takeoffs a non-issue, which means they can easily be operated by anybody who has any experience with a DJI drone. Not a bad product indeed, especially if it works as well as it seems. I will be doing a good deal more flying with this one, and we'll get around to testing video range as well, plus we'll try to adjust the camera angle, get over the altitude limit and a bunch of other stuff. So if you are interested in seeing all of that, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and click on the bell icon to enable notifications for when a new video is published. Also, if you have enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting and sharing it, and if you really liked and found it useful, you could also consider using the new Super Thanks function now available in my videos to show your support and gratitude. Using any of the affiliate links in the description below to purchase anything from those websites will also go a long way towards supporting this channel at no additional cost to you. Another way you can support me is Patreon. The link is also there, and I would like to express my eternal gratitude to all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. I wish you all successful flights, and I will see you next time.